Okay, guys, this is an introduction to a series that has now been ongoing for a couple of years on my YouTube channel. And if you look at the videos in order, they seem kind of odd because they jump around. 1 minute it's a trimaran, then it's a V-hull. Okay, so here's what happened. Originally, my plan was to build an RC sailboat. I didn't want it to blow over no matter what. One way to do that is to make it a trimaran and to control the sail area, give it more surface area lower down to the water instead of crazy high mast height. That was one thing. Also, making it a trimaran and making the pontoons out of foam and all the things I did meant that it was a very good boat. I did it as a two-sail setup with a mast similar, almost identical to this. If you go watch a video called Weights Matter, you'll see that video and wonder what's up. But if unfortunately, I had planned on doing them kind of in an order, and there were tons of videos in the series. The problem is, right around the time I filed patents on this design, or at least one very similar to this, I had a company from the States contact me through the patent office that wanted to work with me to build the vessel. We were in discussions about it, but those discussions broke down very quickly because they are an American company and wanted to own the patents utterly and completely for the next 20 years. Nobody would be able to build it, and they don't do any business in Canada. I'm a Canadian. That's a bloody problem because one of the things I wanted in the contract was that I get the first production boat. They didn't agree to that either. They didn't even want to let me have one or be able to build one after. So I said no, regardless of the fact that they did offer a fair bit of money. Long story short, shortly after that, they went into my phone. Now, at the time, I was shooting a video series on it, figuring that I would be showing that to prospective buyers. And basically, it was a technology walkthrough where I showed from scratch how to build it, how it worked, went into all kinds of detail. And when they tried to take one of the videos off my memory card, it wiped. One of the security features I have in place on my phone and have always had is that since it came out anyway, is that if anybody tries to take anything off the memory card, it automatically wipes the memory card. It's a security feature you can turn on, but it's generally there when you start up the phone with my phone. It's a Motorola G series. Anyway, because of that, I lost all the videos. So there were a few videos up in the series, but the rest were on the phone, and because I hadn't uploaded them yet, they were lost for good. Unfortunately, by then, I had gone with a whole new setup. See, unfortunately, I was not able to get the money together I filed 3 concept patents on it, but I wasn't able to get the money together to build the full-size prototype and pay for all the prototypes. I have a prototype. Believe it or not, a scale prototype is good enough. But coming up with the money was a whole nother thing. So I built the prototype because I had this cool design. Now, the reason I had this cool design was I grew up racing catamarans and sailing. I was a house pilot. I got my captain's papers. And I was an accomplished racer. Even broke a world record and developed a new technique to allow us to achieve more speed. But in all that, we had a problem. When you're on a racing catamaran, it heels over hard. And at that moment of heel, if you take a gust of wind, it'll push the boat right over. And you have to react quickly to avoid that. And the same is true on a V-hull sailboat. In fact, they heel over with much less provocation and are harder to control by definition because they have more sails. And the more sails a vessel has, the harder it is to control in those kinds of conditions because you have a lot of sails to manage and you need to do it fairly quickly. That's one of the reasons why old sailboats had such massive crews, is because you didn't just have one guy adjusting the sails. You needed 20 guys doing it so that the 20 sails could be adjusted all at the same time. No, that's just to manage 8. It's that kind of a job. So I wanted something that was, on one hand, able to manage that and not just blow over. And when I built the first version of this, it was a trimaran for that very reason. Wouldn't blow over no matter what. Just kept going faster when you tried to blow it over. The problem is I realized when I was doing a video series to help, basically I was going to lay out an RC version that you guys could build at home that would be epic. Because RC boats have tons of problems. I'm an RC guy. I've designed RCs in the past. I'm not going to go into the list. It doesn't matter. But in the end, this is my first design for a serious RC sailboat. And I'm doing it for the same reason I did in the 80s. I designed lots of RC stuff because I got some and they sucked. And then I got an RC sailboat in the early 2000s and they sucked. And they still pretty much suck. And it was like 13 years ago. And the reason is they do them in scale. And when you're building a small boat, you really don't want it to be a scale model of a real one. And the reason is physics. The physics changes drastically, and without a real strong knowledge of that, it's really tough to build one that works. I invented the scale equation. That's one of the things I created, and the scale equation is what allows us to figure out the scale of things and how the physics change. I know my business when it comes to this area. Between that and my knowledge of sailing, I figured I was a good person to take a crack at solving the RC sailboat problem. And one of the problems is, let's say, for example, you take a 1/10 scale boat. Your sailboat needs ballast in the keel, usually a lot. If it's an ocean-going vessel, it's thousands of pounds. It's usually at least 1,000, in some vessels too, and very commonly it's 2,000. And so if you built a 10-scale boat, theoretically you should have 200 pounds of weight in that. Nobody does. That's way too much weight. Even 20 pounds, even 10 pounds. It's more like 5 pounds. And 5 pounds is enough that you can take some pressure on the sails, but the boat still heels over very easily because the full-size vessel was designed to heel over fairly easily so that it could get good speed. The problem is they have nothing that really limits them from pushing over. And a lot of RC sailboats sink because once they're on this angle, any more wind than that, and they go over. You try and react with the servo and maybe hit the wrong button and tension it instead of loosen it, and you break the line. That is a problem. All of these things came together. It was 12 feet tall. It had a 6 foot, technically a 4 foot long keel, huge sails that had to stay in place. They're pretty much still like that, guys. They're very awkward to transport. They're slow when you get them there, and they're a pain. So I wanted an RC sailboat that didn't suffer from any of these problems. It has a weighted keel that has a steel weight installed in it. It runs the length of the boat, but it's shallow. It has a 2-inch draft total. It has a rudder, kind of like a tugboat. It's a wood core, but it's wrapped in duct tape. You go, hey, why is that? So when it takes an impact and gets shattered, it stays together. In addition, I built in these little rails on either side, and they're actually fairly symmetrical, and it makes it so that it has a little more grip in the water, and it actually works. They also have deep chines. It has flotation material along the sides so that when it heels over onto a buoyant material and actually stays afloat. If I fill it with water, it won't sink because of that flotation material on the sides here. It's quite substantial. The bow is quite sharp and works quite well. It's a really nice system. It works excellent. And the best part, I haven't even gone into yet. So this boat is fully auto tacking. It works off one single servo to manage the rudder. That's it. You put the boat in the water just the way it sits, and it runs on its own. This can be loosened and is on a bungee cord. It stretches freely. And you can see when hard pressure is put on this, it pops the magnets, which are here, on the forward sails. If you take pressure, it actually just shy of the pressure that's required to make the boat start to heel, this pops and can slide then all the way over to here, and it will. Now, this isn't a bad position and actually puts some good pressure on it and helps drive the boat forward. There's a tensioning line here that helps to limit the travel of the sail. It can easily come back when you tack the other way, and the magnet will lock back in position. In addition, if the winds are heavy, your storm sail, which is the other sail, will come over the same way, and the two will lock together and travel as one sail with the reduced travel. When the wind comes from behind, it pops them back open and resets the magnets, believe it or not, and away you go again. It's a really sweet setup, entirely self-tacking, and I'm going to show you how to build it. And the reason I am is when this company tried to take from my cell phone, they also started trying to build it on their own. They also showed up at my apartment, shoved a camera through the door when they were supposed to show up to discuss this business we had, and they actually came to Canada with no money. they weren't planning on buying it like that we talked about on the phone up until that point. This is when we really started to get into the negotiations. Was when we were supposed to do that, and I did disagreed with a few of their points anyway, and I knew when we talked on the phone that we weren't going to do business. Said so to them right then, and they still showed up at my apartment and tried to put a camera through to be able to see it. So the problem is it's kind of revolutionary, like completely and utterly. And that turned out to be a big deal. Unfortunately, it was also at the beginning of COVID in Canada, and I really couldn't get anybody to fund this. I had one really sweet company that wasn't even making sailboat-related products offer me 10 grand, but a couple months into COVID, the guy couldn't do it anymore, and I don't blame him because his business was suffering. A lot of people's businesses were suffering, and I really wouldn't ask for that if I couldn't make it happen. And I knew it would cost at least the 3 patents. When I filed patents on this concept, they gave me 3 patents because it is that revolutionary, that it needed that many patents. One for the sail, one for the mast system, one for the forward sail system. It just is that way, that it needs that many patents. And so it's very expensive, $7,500 each. To start, and I'm on social assistance. I couldn't come up with that. On top of that, I had this company trying to steal it and then trying to build it on their own, and I knew that meant eventually they would just come out with their own and nobody would even know that I designed it. The world sucks. People are just twisted, evil little brats, and I hate people. But I also know that there's a lot of good people out there, and it's not their fault that these guys are jerks. So what I will say is this was made very quickly, very roughly, and the reason is I wanted to show you that it can be that way. Look at this. It's incredibly messy, guys. Just some quick seams sloppily thrown together, but the boat works spectacularly, and this little lip actually helps to trap air and run it along to the front of the boat, which means it's actually a good thing. A lot of things on this boat look out of place, but it's actually really simple. It's messy, but it's to show you that you could build this very quickly, and it won't matter. I did this just to prototype it, just to dial it in. I'm going to build a totally different set of sails out of black and silver to match the rest of the boat. But before I go ahead and do that, I'm going to show you guys this and lay it all out for you in this series so that you can see for yourself how to build it. It's really simple. The sails have a really nice shape, nice pocket. The other one is very tight, guys, very small and very tight. So it doesn't take much wind. And when the two operate together, it's actually really cool because they pretty much work exactly as one sail. The whole thing is self-tensioning, runs off a single servo. It was designed for an RC, but would work very well on a real boat, only I would get rid of the magnets and just put it on a solid traveler here, and then have control. I'd also put it on a furler running this way so that I can open and close the sails both ways. In a real boat, I would want to be able to do all these things. But in an RC, you really don't have to. And I've designed it so that you won't ever have to. You can just run the vessel. And it's so easy to run. All it takes is you turning and tacking into the wind. And when the wind cuts across this, in heavy winds, it'll just pop that instead of pushing the boat over. The mast heels. And if you watch, there's about the point where it starts to heel over, and the mast is pretty substantially healed. So whereas most boats heel over right away, this one doesn't, and it doesn't need to be decently quick. And when it does, it heels over just enough to take that hull out of the water a bit, and it has to be like 30 knot winds to actually heel this boat right over to the degree that a normal sailboat would be. That's pretty cool. The whole design is epic, and I know that I'm not going to have the money to build this and to bring this to market, and some American company is just going to end up with it, and that's lame. And one way I can fight that is to give it to the whole world. My name is Keith Daniel Robinson. I'm an inventor. This ain't my first time, baby, and this is Revolution. Keith, out.